Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, live demonstration, CyberSaint crosswalking NIST SP 853 to the HIPAA security rule. My name is Ethan Bresnahan. I'm the marketing director here at CyberSaint, and today I'm excited to be joined by CyberSaint VP of Solutions Architecture, Steve Torino, and Senior Sales Engineer, Michael Blumreich. We're so glad that you could join us for today's webinar, and with that, I will hand things off to Steve.
Hi, my name is Steve Torino, and I'm Vice President of Solution Architecture here at CyberSaint. I want to thank you for attending this webinar and also provide some background information before we jump into a demonstration of the solution. Crosswalking has been a longstanding challenge in the industry. The reality is that organizations are subject to more than one cybersecurity framework or standard of practice, depending on things like the jurisdictions where they do business, the industries in which they participate, and the types of customers with whom they wish to do business. Most of these standards are covering domains and controls that overlap, at least to some extent. And in theory, this overlap should make things easier to the extent that we can kind of be sure we comply with the control from one framework. We should be able to map it to controls from another framework and know that we've satisfied that requirement as well. In practice, it's a bit more complicated. Although the controls across two or more frameworks may cover similar content, they often have subtle differences. So for example, let's take vulnerability scanning as an example. A framework like NIST might allow for the frequency of vulnerability scanning to be customized to an organization-defined frequency, whereas the corresponding control from another framework may specify the frequency at which vulnerability scans are to be run, so something like once a week or once a month. Yes, those controls do map to each other, but the subtle difference in frequency makes them not an exact match. Another example could be control inheritance. So most of us by now are probably using some cloud services to operate our business. One of the benefits that comes with that is inheriting certain security controls, such as server patching and an infrastructure as a service model, for example. However, there are other controls for which a shared accountability model applies. In other words, we might inherit part of a control from a CSP, but still have to demonstrate requirements around things like maybe access controller configurations in-house. So what's really critical here is to understand the gap between any two frameworks. And organizations have taken various approaches to finding these gaps or doing crosswalks in order to make their lives easier, because as anybody who's done these exercises knows, it can be really challenging and time consuming. Larger, more complex organizations might roll out something like a large common controls framework, or basically a superset of sorts that can be manually applied across dozens or hundreds of frameworks even. And others might try a method like to rely on the limited set of publicly available crosswalks that are published by authoritative sources like CIS, AICPA, even the informative references to the CSF from NIST. Unfortunately, this is very limited and not available for most frameworks at all. And yet others might work with consultants, bring consultants in and have an engagement to do the crosswalking that they need. What you're going to see today is a demonstration of CyberSaint's unique approach to crosswalking. So whether it's an example of how we can leverage pre-published templates to automate those industry-accepted mappings just at the click of a button, or how to use our patented natural language processing technology to create your own templates from any framework to any other framework by identifying control associations with AI-provided confidence levels, you're going to see a real-world solution that's been custom-built to automate the manual and time-consuming process of crosswalking controls across frameworks. I hope you enjoy the demo.
In order to perform a crosswalk within the CyberStrong solution, we're going to start with the administration page. So I can go and access that here in the upper right-hand corner by clicking on administration. From here, by default, you'll be taken to the manage assessments page. Now, in order to start the crosswalk process, what we're going to do is first find the crosswalk icon that is going to be located here in the actions column. And you're going to go and find the assessment that you're wanting to crosswalk from, that parent assessment. In this case, I'm going to select NIST 853 Rev 5 and the NIST assessment here. I'm going to click the crosswalk assessment icon. Next, I'm going to select which framework I want to crosswalk into. In this case, I'm going to crosswalk into the HIPAA security rule. And what this is going to do is it's mapping controls from the parent assessment into the HIPAA security rule to create a net new assessment, and the assessment will populate based on those mappings. I click on the HIPAA security rule. Next, I'm able to choose which mapping selection I want for the crosswalk. Our natural language processing models, they essentially provide a confidence score of those mappings. So I can select only those mappings that are over 80%, only those that are over 90%, or you can select your own mappings based on the confidence scores. I'm going to choose the empty template. There are also other template options. If they are available, they will populate here and you would be able to select those templates at this point. I'm going to choose the empty template. So from here, I can go through control by control and manually select those mappings, or I can add top mappings for each control, and that's what I'm going to select. Next, I can go and review the confidence score. I can select more options if I so choose, but I do not have to. Next, I can go to my next step. And the last thing that you're needing to do is go through and essentially provide a name and then make a selection of whether or not you want the assessment to be synced. So going to provide a name. In this case, I'm not going to sync this assessment, but I will show you what a synced assessment looks like here momentarily. Next, I'm going to click submit, and this is going to generate a new crosswalked assessment. So we can see here that we have some mappings complete in system. I can go to those controls and see which mappings have come over. In this case, this is also going to be auditable in nature. So again, we can see the crosswalk history and see which, essentially which controls did map over. The difference between this crosswalked assessment and a synced assessment is that instead of making changes at the child level, those synced assessments allow you to make changes directly at the parent level, which will then impact that child assessment. So I can go to my controls and you can see here, this is a synced assessment. And if I go into the assessment itself, we'll notice in this case, again, I can't make changes, but I can leverage the crosswalk history. This is very auditable from a process standpoint. And I can go to my parent control. Here, if I make changes, these changes are automatically going to roll down to that child control. And now you can see that current score went from no to yes. So this really does allow you to assess once and apply to many. The benefits of crosswalking within system, it allows for a more flexible and really effective and efficient process when it comes to, again, assessing against multiple frameworks in system and doing so with a minimum level of effort with maximum efficiency.
Thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. As always, if you're interested in learning more about CyberSaint's AI-backed crosswalking capabilities, please feel free to reach out info@cybersaint.io or visit us at cybersaint.io. We'll see you soon.